Seriously, we are talking about this subject of money and giving, and we realize that it can be tension-filled sometimes. And whether you are a single mom who is struggling maybe just to make the bills, just wondering if there's going to be enough for the electric bill when it comes in. Maybe you're on Social Security, a fixed income, and as you see prices of gasoline and other things go up, you're wondering how long is your fixed income going to last. You might be in a place where you are in middle income or upper middle income, right? But maybe in your situation you have gone through a period in your life like many of us where we have been unwise with money and you have debt looking you in the face. And so when you begin to hear about money, you begin to tense up because you're reminded either of some of the unwise decisions you made or the current situation that you are in. We get that. We really do. We get that. We understand that finances are very, very relative, that to one person $5 or $10 is a lot, and to the next person it might be $5,000, but it's all relative to where you're at. And we understand that it's very real, and it's plaguing sometimes. It can cause evokes all kinds of emotions. I was reminded of that the other day. Dawn and I bought a used car about a month or so ago, and I went in to have it tagged, and I don't know why, but for some reason I had in my mind as I was getting ready to go through the process of tagging it that I was going to owe about $150. And so we went through the process, and I got ready to pull the card out, and the gal looked at me and smiled and said, "Mr. Moss, that will be $750." And I gulped really deep. And it's amazing how many emotions you can feel. Our kids were all coming in with grandkids for the weekend. We just spent about $400 on groceries. I just spent about $300 on a medical bill. I had it all kind of, worked out in my mind as to where it's all going. I thought I had a plan. The extra $600 was not in my plan. And I drove home that day just thinking about oh, you're so stupid, and why didn't you see this coming, and you should have listened, and, all kinds of those kind of things. And then what am I going to do for money for the next 3 days? So we get that. It's real to us. And really today, I want to challenge you. The word's going to challenge us. Some things we're going to hear. But I also want it to be an encouragement to you. And if I just like us for just a moment just to take a collective breath together, all right? Just a deep breath. Can we do that? Even though we're talking about money? And breathe in the fact that we have a very gracious and a very generous Father, Heavenly Father, who does promise to meet our every need. The Apostle Paul, writing to the book of Philippians, says that he will meet every need according to his riches in Christ Jesus. And so we want this to be challenged, but we also want it to be an encouragement today to what God has waiting for us. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever held on to something that you thought was valuable and then you found out it was essentially worthless? Got any of those stories? Baseball cards, Pokemons, pewter plates, whatever it might have been, And then here's my next question. Have you ever heard of a man by the name of Kelvin Baines? Probably not. Kelvin Baines was an Englishman. He had this idea that if he would collect this particular thing, that he could retire on it. So Kelvin Baines began to collect McDonald's Happy Meals. Toys. Excuse me, not the Happy Meals. That would be bad after all, wouldn't it? Okay. McDonald's Happy Meal toys. And for 25 years, Kelvin Baines collected Happy Meals toys, believing that this would be his retirement, all right? The day finally came, he went down to the McDonald's Happy Meal toys guy who was going to give him all this money for this, all right? And he took his 25 years worth, right? And he put them out on the desk, and the man proceeded to hand him, in English money, $1,400. 25 years of collection, waiting for that to be essentially what his retirement would be. $1,400, right? Kelvin Baines soon found out that what he thought he would lean into a retirement was going to be about 6 weeks worth. Kelvin Baines, he no happy, regardless of the number of Happy Meal toys that he held in his possession. So how about you? How about, I mean, you think, does that stir anything like, oh yeah, you know, we've all got that story of something we collected thinking it was going to be so valuable? Well, I've got one for you. Here's one for you. It's told by Dr. Luke in his gospel in the 21st chapter. It's also told by Mark in the 12th chapter of his gospel. It's actually, Luke tells it in 68 words. 68 words, a short story. It is a very, very small story, or a little story with big value. Mark takes a few more words than that, but not many more. It happens, folks, it happens in Jerusalem. It happens in the temple in Jerusalem. And it happens just actually days before Jesus' death at the end of his ministry there in Jerusalem. Mark puts it this way in Mark 12, 41 through 44. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put, and he watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put in more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." If you understand at that point in time, in the temple, when people came into the temple to bring their tithes and their offerings, there were actually, the plates at that time were not plates at all. They were what appeared to be 13 upside-down bronze trumpets. All right, and that's what they look like. All right, I don't know if they played or not, but they were trumpets. They were upside down with the horn, the bell opened up, and people would throw their money in there, and each trumpet was marked to a specific account or place in the temple that your money could be given to. And Luke says that Jesus looked up. Some people believe that he was so worn out by dealing with the Pharisees, by answering all their cornering questions, that he was just literally just tired and his head was down. Mark tells us only that the rich were throwing their money in, something that Luke does not tell us, but that they were throwing their money in. And so you can kind of imagine, you can see all this, the loudness of the clanking and all those kind of things. What Jesus hears, maybe the reason he looks up, what he hears is the clanking of all these coins as the rich are tossing them, practicing their pitching, into these 13 bronze trumpets. That's what he hears. It's like if you've ever been to the bank and someone brings a big envelope or a big container of coins in and, wants to cash out or whatever, and they pour it in and you hear that clinking, and the clanking. It's always kind of a cool thing, especially if it's you who's getting the money. We usually do that right before vacation. We save all our coins, then we take them right before we go on vacation. That's what Jesus hears. All that clanking of the rich throwing their money in. And that's what he sees. He sees them tossing their money in. He sees then also this poor widow. He sees the poor widow who walks by and she takes these 2 small coins and she places it in. And it goes from clanking to clinking. If you're familiar with the coins at that time, they were called mites. They were also called lepta. And lepta is basically a derivative of a word meaning shavings of metal. It was almost kind of a humorous word, almost a mocking word, in the sense of that's not really even enough for a coin. It's just the shavings of the metal from a coin. And both coins together were worth, get this, about 1/64 of a day's wages. So there's just almost nothing there. So he hears this clanking. And he sees the rich throwing the money in, and he sees this poor widow go by. And what he says and what he does at that point in time reveals maybe something else that Jesus knows about this entire situation. What he does is he calls his disciples. He says, he's sitting there and you can see him gathering them, and they stand around him. And here's what he says. What Jesus says is, I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth. This poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty put in everything, all she had to live on. Now this phrase, I tell you the truth, or truly I tell you in some versions, this is a phrase that Jesus uses a lot in his ministry. And then I've just been reading the different Gospels, just finished them actually in my own reading as I read through the Bible chronologically this last year. And I realized that it seems to me that as Jesus nears the end of his life and nears closer to the cross, that he uses this phrase more often. Jesus uses this phrase, I tell you the truth, folks, when he sees something happening that is not true. When he notices something that is going on in front of them and in front of his believers, his followers, that is not true. When he sees his children believing something that really should not believe. When he sees them taking bait that shouldn't be taken, he draws a line and he says, no, wait a second, in a sense, this is not true. I know this is normal, but this is not true. I tell you the truth. It is always contrasted with something that he sees or is experiencing that is not true. Jesus shares these words. We got to hear this because this is at the heart of this passage. Jesus shares these words when he sees something that is damaging to the hearts of his children and his followers. Does that make sense to you? When he says, I tell you the truth, it's a warning in a sense. It's a caution. It's a pulling back and saying, wait, don't proceed. I'm going to tell you what's right. I'm going to tell you the path. See, Jesus' heart and his love for you and I is shown in a remarkable way in this desire for us to know truth and live in the freedom that truth brings. I tell you the truth. See, what Jesus sees here, what he hears is clanking. The clanking of these coins as the rich throw them into the bronze trumpet. What he sees is the smugness of those making the pitch of the coins and the envy of all those who are watching. Oh, wow, I wish I could give that much. If he's giving that much, think what he's probably got at home. All that envy. What he hears is the clinking of two small mites that a poor widow places into the bronze trumpets. What he sees is the humility on the face of that widow and the disgust of those watching. Oh my goodness, what a pitiful offering. How dare she? Does she not have any more than that to give to the Lord's work? And what he says to us reveals to us what he values and what is actually at the heart of this passage, folks. Now, we're not told what the apostles' response was. I tell you the truth, she has given more, is what Jesus says. But you can imagine, can't you? I mean, can't you imagine? They're all gathered around him. They're ready for some really like this great lesson. He says, I tell you the truth, she gave more than the rich people did. And like Peter kind of burst out in laughter. You can see Judas grabbing the calculator going, what? You can see the rest of them just kind of smirking and going like, Jesus, I don't think that's the truth. They obviously gave more than she did. Folks, see, Jesus sees what we cannot see. Jesus sees what we cannot see in this and in every other experience in our life. And what he sees caused him to do what he did, which was to gather them for an important lesson and to share what he did. I'm going to tell you the truth, because what you're seeing and experiencing, he is saying, is not the truth at all. It's amazing what he sees that we don't see. It's amazing to me what we can often see even when we're looking right at something. Here several months ago, I was sitting in my backyard as a Saturday morning. I was having just reading the Word and having some quiet time, and I looked up, and there's this little rat terrier in the yard in back of ours. And this rat terrier looked exactly like a rat terrier that we had for about 14 or 15 years, and named Sweet Pea. And this little rat terrier is back there, and I thought, oh my goodness, my grandkids love Sweet Pea. At least a couple of them did. The girls did. And so I saw, and the little rat terrier's name was Shooter. And so I saw Shooter back there, and Shooter's running back and forth. And all of a sudden, Shooter gets a soccer ball. And Shooter starts nosing the soccer ball all over, just going crazy, just like Sweet Pea did. And I thought to myself, oh, that is so cool. I'm going to video Shooter, and I'm going to send it to the grandgirls, and they'll just love that. And so I was enjoying the moment. So I got my phone out, and I walked to the back of the fence, and I was videoing it. And I was probably there for a minute or whatever, and I was just smiling, kind of laughing, because it's really funny watching this little dog go back and forth. All of a sudden, I looked up from my screen, and I realized that the woman who lives at the house was on the back porch. And she was in her bathing suit. And she was standing up, and she was looking right at me. I'm not exactly sure what I said, actually. I think I said something like, I was making a video of your dog playing soccer, or something. And then I backed up slowly and went back and quickly opened my Bible on the back porch. Isn't it amazing what we can look at and not see at all sometimes? Jesus sees what we cannot see. And he values something that we don't value. See, what Jesus values in a gift is two things to determine the value. One, the spirit which the gift is given, the spirit which it is given. The second is the sacrifice with which it is given. How much does it really cost? A guy, a speaker and leader that I have a great admiration for, heard several years ago talking about it in a sermon one day, and he said, he was talking about marriage, and he said, I finally realized that, he said, it's not just the flowers. My wife likes flowers. But he said, I finally realized, he said, I would come home. If I came home, there was a guy that was literally right on the side of the road. I could pull off the side of the road into this little place, almost just roll my window down, hand in the money. He would hand me the flowers, and I would be off. I'd come home, and he said, worked a couple times. Then my wife realized what I was doing, that I was just pulling off the side of the road, getting the flowers and coming home. And so all of a sudden, she had less appreciation for those flowers. Now, he said, if I took the time to actually go to a florist or actually stop by a field somewhere and pick the flowers, that always is a winner, right, men? He said, all of a sudden, her appreciation of that gift went up considerably. Same flowers. It's all about the sacrifice involved in the mind of the person who received it. See, folks, don't miss this. See, Jesus does not determine the value of my gift and your gift by its size or its weight or its clang. He determines it by what is kept. In verse 4 of Luke 21, Jesus says, all these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Now, what does that mean? Well, something else that we're not told what the apostles' response for, and we're also not told something, but if you allow me a little license, I want to go somewhere that the Scripture actually doesn't go, but it happened. I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but I know it happened. What happens is that after the rich throw their gifts in, and after the widow places her gift in, both went home. At some point in time, maybe they did some grocery shopping. I don't know what they did. She didn't do any grocery shopping. She didn't have any money. They went home. What do the rich go to? Now, this is not a put down of big houses. It's not a put down of new cars. That is not the heart of this issue whatsoever. So don't get hung up on that. And we also need to realize that, we're all saying, well, Steve, I'm not rich. Well, we really are. According to the standards of the rest of the world, we have much, much more. And most of us are able to pay our bills most of the time. And that actually makes us rich in a lot of ways. And so when the rich came home, what does the rich do? What does that person do? They have bills they have to pay. And the money's there for it to be paid. And the mortgage comes in, and they have money for that to be paid. And maybe a medical bill or comes in. And then on a Friday night, they're thinking about some entertainment. And there's just a little bit extra. Maybe not a lot, but there's that. And so all the things that are needs in their life, or even wants, who do they rely on? Themselves. It's there for them. It's something that they don't have to think about a prayer. They don't have to think about a plea. They don't have to think about crying out for God. It is there for them. And when the widow comes home and the hunger begins to come on and it begins to be supper time, or the bill is there in the mail, what is she to do? What does she do? Where is her reliance because of the gift that she gave? Her reliance because of not only what she gave, but what she kept. Her reliance is upon God. And because if her reliance is on God and she has to rely on God for her needs, God will provide for her needs, and her trust and faith is built. See, folks, when God is guiding us, He always provides for our needs. Time after time after time after time in Scripture, it is true. Philippians 4:19 again says, "And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus." All your needs. Now, I'm just going to say this. This is not condemning. This is not judging. I am saying we struggle because of the culture we live in, because of the country we live in. We struggle a lot with getting needs and wants confused and thrown into the same pot, don't we? There are all kinds of things that we consider needs that are really simply only wants. I want to go out and eat out a couple times a week. It's nice, and we do. And sometimes I convince myself it's a need, but it is not. There are things that I want in the car that I drive. There are all kinds of different things that I want, and they are not needs, they are wants, and we confuse those two. And Jesus just says, hey, I'm going to meet every one of your needs. Sometimes I'm going to take care of your wants, sometimes. But I'm not going to promise that. Sometimes, as James says, we have extra. Those are wonderful times. He did a great job of challenging us and teaching us last week on what to do with that. Folks, listen. We've got to hear this. We've got to hear this. This is not a money thing. This is not a money thing. This small story with big value is not a money thing. It is a trust thing. Funny that in Mark 6 and Luke 7, just chapters before this actual story that we're looking at, actually what you find is Jesus going into this village, this Jewish village with Jewish people and, little God followers, And you know what? They amaze him. They amaze him. You know why they amaze him? Because of their lack of faith. And then Luke tells a story. Luke tells a story about this man who is a Roman centurion. And he says, Jesus, I understand authority, Jesus. Would you heal my son? You don't even have to go there. All you have to do is say the word. And Jesus looks at this pagan Roman centurion and says, it says of Jesus, he was amazed at the man's faith. I've not seen faith like this anywhere, he said. What amazes Jesus? Either our lack of faith or the amount of our faith. How do you want to amaze Jesus? I know I want to amaze Jesus. The thing that amazes Jesus, folks, is real, active trust. Now, someone might say, well, how about love? Isn't love important? Oh, absolutely. Love is very, very important. It's key to us as followers of Jesus Christ. But Galatians 5:6 says this. This is kind of interesting. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. So actually, in order for us to have true Christian love, it has to spring from actually our faith. And that's a whole nother sermon, and I love that passage. It's one of my favorite in the New Testament. Take a look at it and see what you think. Jesus saw what he saw, folks, and he said what he said because Jesus knew. He saw through and he knew that the woman's giving exposed her true heart. Her giving exposed what she truly, truly valued. And what she valued was what Jesus values. It showed whom she really trusted. She was saying to God by what she kept, I trust you, Father, to meet my needs. It's not about money. See, what I give, what you and I give, I mean, even more importantly, what we keep is the chief indicator of what we really value. Now, that's a tough challenge. I understand that's a tough piece to chew on. What we give, but even more so than what we keep, is really the chief indicator of what we value. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Not the opposite. Where your heart is, there your treasure will be. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And also, you know what? What I give and what I keep is the acid test of what or whom I trust. Jesus values more than anything else. What he wants from you and I is active trust. And I'm just going to say this, that active trust will always result in sacrificial giving. Now that's a hard one to chew on. And some of you may be new in the church, you may be new in the faith, you may not even be in faith, and that may be very, very that may be really, really hard for you to hear. But remember that Jesus tells us the truth to bring freedom in our lives so that we will not be chained to the things that we are trusting that will never give us what they promise. And Jesus always gives us what he promises us. He will always meet our needs, and he brings freedom to our lives. Folks, let me tell you this. I have some really great news. I mean, really, I have some really great news. I want this to be an encouragement because, I mean, honestly, who wants to be known for mediocre faith? I mean, who wants to be like a midget spiritually? Okay? That wasn't probably politically correct. I'm sorry. Okay? Who wants to just, who wants to like be the guy who amazes Jesus with my small amount of faith? Not me. I mean, if you're like me, heck, I want to grow. I want my faith to be vibrant. Don't we all? Isn't that what we want? And so the good news is this. I can and you can change my values. What is it I value? I don't like what I value, so I want to change it, okay? I want to change it to what Jesus values. I can change my values by changing my investment plan. And I'm not talking about retirement, although that might be part of it too. I'd like to put more in my retirement, but I'm committed to some things in the kingdom that I'm going to give to. And so I'm trusting. I told my financial guy about 15 years ago, hey, I'm not putting money there because I'm putting it over here. and I believe that God is going to take care of us in later years in retirement. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Didn't make sense to him. Folks, I'm going to say this to you. You can change your values by changing your investment plan. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you what you can invest in. When Jesus left this earth, God's intent was that the gospel, that the message of the gospel, his death and resurrection, that it would be taken and heard all over the world. That was the mission the apostles were given. And you know what he chose? He chose something that he called the church. The church. And the church was the organism that he put in place for the gospel to be taken to all points of the world. Now, the church has taken all kinds of hits in the last few years. There's a lot of people who are down on the church and down on authority in the church and all kinds of things. And it deserves some of that. I won't fight that. But I'm telling you that our mission that is God-given and God-sent is still true. And that the church is the organism that God has given the authority to take the gospel to all the world so that people can hear about Jesus and spend eternity and find freedom in their life and be released from slavery and captivity. And listen, folks, we are still the church. We are the church. We're not the only church, but we are the church. And this church is doing what God has prepared and sent it to do, folks. This summer, we will send over 60 high school students to a week of intense discipleship. 60, just high school kids. We'll send another 40 or 50 to camps for discipleship. In the last 7 or 8 months and coming in the next couple months, we're going to be sending 3 different teams out to different places in the world to build up the workers there and to take the gospel to those who have not heard the gospel. In just a few weeks, we're going to be having elementary kids coming for Vacation Bible School, kids who have never heard the gospel before, who will have a chance to hear the gospel. Every day here, folks, every day, lives are being transformed in one way or another. Every Thursday evening, folks with addictions and hurts and habits and hang-ups come, and their lives are transformed because of the grace and truth that they receive. And I'm telling you, folks, this church is doing what God has prepared and sent it to do. And I'm just making a statement. It is worth your investment because it is the greatest cause in the entire world. And companies will fold and rituals will blow up and burn up. But the church will go on and its cause will go on, and we will continue to do what God has given us to do. It is worth your investment. And as you do that, it will change your values. I came to a place a couple years ago in my life where our own salaries were increasing, or what we had come in was increasing, and I got comfortable, and I thought, I don't like this. I'm valuing comfort too much. There's too much margin there. And I thought, what can I do to increase my faith to get out of this place of comfort? And Dawn and I decided we would give more. One, because I knew that this was a place where it was the greatest cause. It was the greatest cause, changing lives and transforming. And 2, because I wanted my values changed. And folks, we can not only change our values, but we can grow our faith muscles by decreasing what we keep. You hear that? By decreasing what we keep. I want to be really practical just closing today. I know this is tension-filled. I can feel it. There's not a lot of giggles going on out there, okay? Let me just be really practical for you. This hurts because we want to believe we trust God, but then sometimes when we're faced with the fact that maybe we don't trust Him as much as we say we do, we can sing the songs, we can worship, we can feel good, we can be lovey with people and kind, but this part of giving is an essential trust matter. So let me be practical for you. First of all, put away your calculator. Because here's what happens. And folks, I mean, I do this. I mean, I have, I have a budget of my own for my own family, and I have. And we've raised 4 boys, and sometimes it was super, super thin. And you get ready to think about how much you're going to give, and you get the calculator, and you add up the utilities. I was just doing this the other day, and you add up your mortgage, and you add up, and you end up thinking about, okay, well, if I've got anything at the end, then that's what we'll give. Don't do that. Don't get your calculator out. You have to come out with something that by faith, led by the Holy Spirit, that you believe that will be sacrificial. Do get a notebook. Get a notebook, really, and a pen. And because God is going to begin to show you and give you all kinds of stories and provide in ways that you never thought possible. You need to write those down, because there'll be a time later when you'll be tempted not to give. And you'll need to go back to that story and go, hey, remember last year how God came through? That notebook will be a history pad for you. It'll also serve as something that you can share with your children about the time that God, or the times that God has come through for us. Listen, here's another one. Give first. Don't pay all your bills and see what's left. God is first, right, in our life? God is first. So give him the first bit. And then when you pay it, and if it comes up short, that's where God has to come in. That's where the trust is built. That little short area that, oh, man, this needs to be paid, but it doesn't look like it's going to be there. That's when you say, God, I'm trusting you. I'm nervous as all get out. Please provide. And we begin to watch him take care of things that we never thought he could take care of. Do that first. You know what? A couple paychecks. I'm just being honest with you. I mean, we try to always give first. Several paychecks ago, I got the paycheck. We had some bills. We started putting bills out and paying bills. All of a sudden, I got to the end. Guess what? I didn't have any money for my tithe. Really frustrating to me. And I realized, you know what? I did it exactly opposite of the way that I know I need to do it. I waited till the end, and at the end, there was nothing left. When I give first, he takes care of the rest. And also, don't wait. Don't wait. And by that, I mean, don't act like this is something you have to contemplate and pray about a whole lot. Honestly, because it's an act of faith. And if it's the right thing to do, the right time to do it is now. And so I would encourage you, I don't know if you can give in the next 12 hours, but do it. You need to act on it because it's the right thing to do, and because it will build trust. Don't wait. Don't sit and think about it. Don't contemplate. Your mind will become a mental calculator, and you'll end up not making a move on it. You'll be paralyzed by fear. And fear is very natural when we come talking about trust and money stuff. We're taking the trust out of our bank account and out of ourselves and what we can provide, and we're putting our trust in God instead. Don't wait till you feel faithful. Don't wait till you feel faithful. Just do it. The faith will come. The faith is there in the doing. The feelings will come maybe later on. Folks, let me say this. Invest yourselves. Invest yourselves. Invest God's money that he has given you. Invest your time. Invest your heart. Invest your resources. Invest it in something that is the greatest cause ever in the history of man, and before that, the going out of the gospel of Jesus Christ into this world, something this church is committed to, and I am not afraid. I'm not afraid to ask. Don't think that there are down times in this church that there's not funds needed. Sometimes summer gets a little thin. I understand we want to spend it on vacation. But folks, the realistic, sometimes we have more costs during the summer because we're doing all kinds of mission stuff and sending kids out all kinds of places. So be really, really careful that your money doesn't end up somewhere, in a vacation account or something else. Just trying to be honest with you, all right? Invest. If you've never maybe made a commitment, a investment in this church or in any church, and you're just kind of hanging on the perimeter, I encourage you today. I encourage you to come forward and become a part of this great cause on our mission to reach this community with the gospel of Jesus Christ by loving people and teaching the truth. I encourage you, challenge you to make that commitment. And I encourage you to build your trust and change your values by keeping less.